We know for a fact that Cyberpunk 2077 is primarily going to be a single-player role-playing game. This is something that CD Projekt Red has continued to emphasize, but over the years, throughout the lead-up to Cyberpunk 2077's reveal and beyond, we have heard rumblings about a multiplayer mode that's being researched and developed. We have heard that there are plans for some type of online component, but we have never really gotten official 100% confirmation. But all of that changed today when CD Projekt Red took to Twitter to post the following. Until now, the only thing we said about multiplayer was that it was in R&D. As we're getting closer to launching single-player Cyberpunk 2077 in April 2020, we'd like to confirm that multiplayer is in the works. If you feel like lending us your skills, apply by clicking on the following link. And then below that, they clarified that, quote, the plan for now is to deliver Cyberpunk 2077 in April, then follow up with DLCs, free, hell freaking yes, and single-player content, so paid expansions akin to Blood and Wine. And once we're done, invite you for some multiplayer action. So I love the plan here. Basically, they're saying we're gonna focus on the single-player. The multiplayer isn't going to detract from the core of Cyberpunk 2077, which is a single-player role-playing game. So that is fantastic news. And they're going to deliver on all the content for the single player first, so free DLC and the paid expansions before they delve into the multiplayer stuff. I'm sure there's going to be some crossover where after the single player launches and once they start working on DLC and the paid expansion, they're still going to have some people starting to work on the multiplayer. But in terms of the single player campaign that most of us are looking forward to, that's still going to be the primary focus as the game approaches its April launch. So I think this is a good plan of attack, and it's an endeavor that I hope they succeed in. And we can see right here, if we go to the official CD Projekt Red website, that now there are a bunch of listings for Cyberpunk multiplayer. Everything here is for Cyberpunk, and as far as multiplayer is concerned, they require a 3D character artist, a design director, a dev ops engineer, a game designer, a lead QA analyst, a network programmer, a senior gameplay programmer, and a tools programmer. So they're still hiring a lot of people, which tells me that the multiplayer component isn't too far into development. Now, multiplayer is something that's been in discussions for a while now. We have heard rumblings of this for years and years, which is why I'd like to take you through a bit of the history in regards to the things we have heard about multiplayer throughout the years. Rumors about there possibly being a multiplayer component in Cyberpunk can actually be traced as far back as July 2012. Back then, the studio's head of marketing, Mikhail Platko-Giluski, sorry, I butchered that completely. He told Eurogamer this: "We want to bring to the team someone experienced in this field to evaluate our concepts and ideas. He will be one of backbone elements of our R&D." And this is in reference to an ad that was posted way back when about a multiplayer online programmer. And according to Eurogamer, this job listing, the multiplayer programmer job, was advertised for someone to, quote, prepare our engine for challenges of upcoming online component of our future games. So this was before Witcher 3 even launched. So back in 2012, multiplayer was something they were kind of considering, but they didn't have any concrete ideas whatsoever. They were essentially bringing in people experienced with multiplayer to bounce off ideas and see where they could take this. From there, the following year, on March 2013, CD Projekt Red were more concrete about relaying that they are looking forward to delving into multiplayer features for Cyberpunk. This is what they told Eurogamer back then. It will be a story-based RPG experience with amazing single-player playthroughs, but we're going to add multiplayer features. So this is something they've been thinking about basically since the beginning of this game's development. This brings us to the following year after that, January 2014, when website IGN talked to Marcin Iwiński way back then, and he relayed in regards to multiplayer. Quote, "People have been asking me if Cyberpunk 2077 will have multiplayer or if it will be a straight-up shooter, and I tell them to relax because it will be a true RPG game. We are known for storytelling and big game worlds, and so we're taking all what we have learned from previous 3 Witcher games, as well as the open world aspect, and applying it to Cyberpunk 2077. So yes, it's an all-out RPG game, but we're looking at having a lot of new gameplay elements that I cannot talk about yet. One thing I can say for sure is that it is definitely not a multiplayer shooter." Now, he's not saying that there wouldn't be any multiplayer elements in Cyberpunk. He's saying that it's not like a Call of Duty type of experience. This brings us to 2 years later, so it went radio silent for a while, but then on August 2016, we began to see job listings for things like senior multiplayer designer, which definitely seemed to indicate that they were moving forward with implementing multiplayer elements in Cyberpunk. But alongside that, they also featured job listings for vehicle gameplay designer. From there, Game Pressure on September 2016 released the following article in which they talked about the Polish government sort of funding CD Projekt Red, giving them a grant for, $7 million? And part of that involved CD Projekt Red taking those funds to develop seamless multiplayer that was described as, quote, "a complex technology for making unique multiplayer gameplay mechanics, including the ability to search for opponents, manage game session, replicate objects, and support for different game modes, along with a unique set of dedicated tools." Then the following year, on November 2017, Adam Kaczynski, CEO of CD Projekt, talked to Polish investment website Strefa Inwestoro. I'm sure I butchered that as well. And to that outlet, he said this: "Online is necessary or very recommended if you wish to achieve a long-term success. At some point, we have mentioned that there will be a certain online element related to Cyberpunk." Now, at this point in time, this is November 2017, the whole Battlefront 2 fiasco had happened, and people were concerned that when he talked about an online element for long-term success, he was maybe referring to like a live service type of thing. But CD Projekt Red very quickly clarified that this is not something to worry about in a tweet that reads, "Worry not when thinking Cyberpunk 2077, think nothing less than Witcher 3. Huge single-player, open-world, story-driven RPG. No hidden catch, you get what you pay for. No bullshit, just honest gaming like Wild Hunt. We leave the creed to others." Oof! Damn. Which brings us to the next year, March 2018, during a financial conference that CD Projekt Red streamed at the time. CEO Adam Kaczynski said this: "First of all, we're going to deliver the players a huge story-driven role-playing game for a single player, as was the case with The Witcher 3. This is in discussion about Cyberpunk. As a further extension," he could mean expansion, "of the game, I don't like to comment, but I'm not saying it's not going to be the case because we already said in the past we wanted our future projects to integrate online components at some point." Then this article is also from Eurogamer. This is from June 2018, so this was shortly after we were shown Cyberpunk 2077 for the first time in its current iteration. So that trailer we saw at E3 2018 and the behind closed doors presentation that many news outlets and influencers saw at the event. So after all that, this is an interview that Quest designer Patrick Mills did with Eurogamer. And in regards to multiplayer, Patrick was asked, "So there's no multiplayer whatsoever?" Patrick responded, "We have multiplayer in R&D, but the game we are shipping to you, the game you're going to buy, is the single-player experience. That's really what we're concentrating on now, the single-player RPG experience. That's what we want to nail down before we start looking at any of these other things." Then Eurogamer asked, "So when you say you've got multiplayer in R&D, do you mean in relation to Cyberpunk 2077 or just generally at the studio?" Patrick said in relation to Cyberpunk, as well as just generally at the studio. Then he was asked, so maybe multiplayer will come post-launch? Patrick Mills said, maybe, no promises, nothing at launch. At launch, we're concentrating on the single-player game. That's what we want to give you. A few days later, on June 27th, 2018, so this is after E3, 2 job listings popped up for a network programmer and a senior technology programmer, both related to Cyberpunk 2077, tagged for Cyberpunk 2077, and there was another job listing for a multiplayer designer, so it all kind of painted a clear picture. And then a few months after that, on October 2018, CD Projekt Red partnered with this multiplayer studio from Canada called Digital Scapes, which further seemed to indicate that things were moving along as far as Cyberpunk 2077 multiplayer was concerned. This finally brings us to this year, 2019, and this specific article from Eurogamer is from June 13th, so during E3. During that event, Eurogamer caught up with Pavel Sasko, who is a quest designer for Cyberpunk, and he was asked, CD Projekt Red has talked about multiplayer before. Now you have a release date set. Can you confirm it will just be single player at launch? Sasko said, yes, 100%. We're not really working on multiplayer. Our sole focus is single player. We'll do that. Then we'll see. We're not saying no, but we're not saying yes. If something does happen, it will definitely be post-launch, and that's as much as I can say right now. And then when asked about Night City being used as the sandbox for a GTA Online type of experience, Sasko said, there were some discussions in the studio, but nothing we're actually working on making it happen, testing, possibly for the future. And then finally, Sasko was asked, is there anything you'd avoid with multiplayer which might not feel authentic? Sasko said, for sure, I mean, we're known for good stories, amazing characters, choices, and consequences, so this is something for sure we'd be going with if anything happened regarding that. We'd avoid anything that's not that. If we do it, it'll be our style. So this multiplayer component, it looks like, will be very story-driven as well, which is fantastic to hear. It's not just going to be some sandbox where you kill a bunch of things. It's going to have a lot of story elements where maybe players are going to be grouping up together as this party of cyberpunks and making choices together to develop certain stories. It'll be interesting to see what CD Projekt Red's version of multiplayer looks like and how they're going to push that type of gameplay and genre forward in terms of storytelling and communal gameplay. I'm curious to see how that works out. Last but not least, here's an article from a few days ago, actually, August 20th, 2019, and during Gamescom, Eurogamer managed to talk to CD Projekt Red, and in regards to multiplayer, they said, we are doing R&D into multiplayer, but we're focusing on single-player experience, and that's what you'll get in 2020. It doesn't mean we are saying no to multiplayer, but it doesn't mean we're saying yes either. It's still an R&D phase. So almost the exact same answer as Pavel Sasko here. They definitely kind of coordinated this response. He also added, if you add multiplayer functions, it has to be right. Immersion is super important for us, and we have to make sure everything fits together. The single player experience, it all fits together. We're not just going to slap some multiplayer feature in, and that'll be it. It's possible if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. We would never make anything that's not at least the Witcher standard for Cyberpunk. I don't know what the future holds, but we will make sure everything we make will be high quality. So that's good to hear. It sounds like they're going to take this multiplayer component seriously after the single player launches and really develop it into a full-fledged experience rather than, just something that's slapped in there without much thought. Which finally brings us to this tweet from September 4th, 2019, just a few hours ago. Here they're saying absolutely 100% we are working on multiplayer, which is a first. They have referenced it in the past and they've strongly hinted at multiplayer in the past. This is the first time they have officially confirmed that yes, there is going to be multiplayer, and it'll probably be a while before this comes to fruition given all the work they have to do for the single player experience alone, not only the core game but also the free DLCs and the expansions. But I'm assuming maybe in 2 years after Cyberpunk 2020's launch, we might see some hints as to what ideas they have for multiplayer and how that's going to be brought to life. But until then, I'd love to hear what your thoughts and theories are in terms of what we can expect for Cyberpunk 2077's multiplayer mode in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.